Welcome into the Underdog Productions Game of the Week pregame show. It's the very first episode. I'm really excited to go over the two matchups we have. I decided to do a doubleheader to kick this thing off. But before I do that, I just wanted to kind of go over, for those who haven't been tuned in just yet, what Underdog Productions Game of the Week is. So there are other Game of the Week products out there that, they're bringing their crews and they're going to do live broadcasts of the game. That's not what we're doing. Very cool. I love that there's people out there doing that for the kids. But what we're doing is a little bit different. We're going to take a little bit more of a cinematic approach, an NFL films type approach, to where we're going to get the build up, taking footage of the fan experience, grabbing pregame footage, and really telling the deeper story of these matchups. We're going to have, marquee matchups where two Titanic programs clash. We have one of those games to break down this week. And then we're going to have games that are maybe two, inner city teams that are used to each other and have rivalry stories going along with it, or maybe, next door towns. And then we're going to have, maybe up and coming programs facing other up and coming programs. Two of these matchups were decided by a point last year. One, if not both of them, I believe, were decided in overtime. What we'll do is we'll go into each team and their storylines, recent, history and what their season looked like last year, some players to look out for this year, any storylines that are kind of floating around, and touch on that. And then we'll kind of get into the matchups themselves and how those storylines collide with one another and can tell a story here. So we'll start off with the first matchup. We have Shoreland Lutheran hosting the Division 7 state champions, the St. Joseph Lancers. Should be a great matchup. I think that they're two programs in different places and coming off of different types of seasons. First, we'll talk about Shoreland Lutheran, the Pacers, and talk about their big offseason story. And the big news for them is they got a new coach. Zach Brugg is taking the reins. He is a Shoreland alumni, played college ball for Wisconsin Lutheran. So, he's got some next level knowledge, and he's got deep ties with Shoreland. So, the big question with him is, what is that going to look like? Shoreland last year was, and in previous years, was a very run heavy team. They relied on their running backs. They handed the ball off a lot. They didn't pass the ball a lot. Is that going to be the same thing, or is he going to bring a new approach to it? So talking a little bit about last year, Shoreland went 5-5 and made the playoffs. It's a pretty solid season. They went 4-3 in their conference. So I believe they finished fourth in that conference. Didn't have such great luck in the first round of the playoffs. But one thing to point out about their season last year is two of their matchups in conference were decided by less than a score. So, if they can start to grow and maybe become a little bit more dynamic with their offense and flip a couple of those types of games, maybe they get to a different place at the end of the season. They get a little bit better draw early in the playoffs and, can maybe show some new things this year. So that's really exciting. Couple players to talk about that are making a comeback and, should be impactful this year. Two offensive linemen. We got Peyton Jacobson, returning all conference offensive lineman, and then Carl Wagner, also returning all conference offensive lineman. I've seen articles where Coach Brugg has brought their names up and talked about them and says they should be impactful. A key player that I wanted to talk about was Riley Jacobson, key two-way backfield player. So he's defensive back, running back. Coach Brugg has specifically pointed him out in articles to say that he should be impactful on both sides of the ball. He led the team, I believe, in receiving yards and tackles as a sophomore, and he missed most of last season. So it will be huge for them to get him back and involved in the offense and defense, and could be a key. All right, let's move into St. Joseph's and talk about them. And, to start off, you got to address the giant trophy in the room. They are defending Division 7 state champions and went 16-0 in games they played and lined up against another team, plus forfeit. So technically a 17-0 season. They had their senior quarterback lead them to the promised land, and they were exciting and fun to watch. And it took them all the way to Camp Randall and brought the hardware home. So Coach Matt Rizzo has been with this program a while, highly established. So, turnover to high school programs, it's something they're used to. And, the question when you have turnover like that is it a reload or a rebuild? Um, you know, I think that there are some key players that are still coming back with some experience, and the younger players got to see what it takes to win a championship, and it's their turn to see if they'll fill those shoes. The big offseason news for St. Joe's is they move conferences and will have to face some new competition. So after starting off against Shoreland, they'll play teams like Brookfield Academy and Racine Lutheran. I think the biggest question for them is how do they replace their quarterback, who is WFCA Small Division Player of the Year. So now going into the matchup itself, this has not been a back and forth rivalry. It's been a little while since Shoreland has taken this matchup. In fact, I went and looked in, and what I found was the last time Shoreland won a game against St. Joe's was 12 years ago. So, from what I can see, 7 straight wins for St. Joe's. They don't play every single year, but they have played each other pretty consistently. The game hasn't been incredibly close, but fun, deep dive story. The last time that Shoreland beat St. Joe's, Coach Brugg was on Shoreland's team. So maybe he can find a way to get it done. So you have two teams that are bringing up some younger underclassmen from last year and are filling key roles. You have, new things going on, big shoes to fill. Is this the year that these two teams see a closer matchup? For matchup number 2, we're going to go to a clash of two perennial contenders, state championship lineage. We have the Wanakee Warriors going to face off against the Muskego Warriors at Muskego. Both of these teams came just short of getting up to Madison last year, lost in the semifinals. Arrowhead beat Wanakee 19-17, just 2 points short, and then Muskego was edged out by 3 points, 38-35 by Bayport. We all know what happened with Arrowhead Bayport. Crazy state finals game. But you got to think about these two teams, and they're going to be hungry to get back to Madison. The game's so close. They have great teams, and a week 1 matchup. Just can't ask for a better way to start the season. We'll start breaking down Muskego first. Classic 8 champions. They went 7-0 in conference. Not easy to do. The Classic 8 is an absolute gauntlet. They add Franklin into that conference this year, which is absolutely crazy. It's kind of like Texas getting added to the SEC. Big offseason story for Muskego is that Ryan Lucchese takes over the program. Longtime coach Ken Kraus retired. He's still near the program from what I'm hearing from news sources, and he's still at practices, kind of helping that transition. But, again, a new era. And I think that Muskego feels really confident in what is to come under Coach Lucchese. But it's a new era, and he's going to be able to put his imprint on the team. I believe he was the defensive coordinator, so he knows the program very well. He knows what the culture is. Most importantly, he doesn't have to come in and rebuild everything, but he will, I'm sure, put his own stamp on it. Big story for the Muskego Warriors is they have 7 offensive starters returning. Some really big players, including Joey Shaw, their quarterback, first team all conference quarterback, and they came up just short. Bryson Hoffler, 1,051 yards, 9 touchdowns as a sophomore. So him coming back, you have your quarterback, you have your running back. If you've ever been out to a Muskego game, you have to feel bad for opposing defenses. They run the wing T offense to perfection. And me as a cameraman, it makes it tough, and I got to play it safe because you just never know where the ball is going to pop out, which runner is going to come through that line with it. It's very, very well executed. They're very well coached. And then on the other side, only 2 defensive starters are returning. So going to be a little bit different. Defense was a strong suit for Muskego last year. I watched them in the playoffs in round 2, and they were just absolutely suffocating. It was brutal. They don't give up much. They get a preseason ranking of number 2 in Division I. So, with all the returning firepower on offense and the system in place with the defense, defensive coordinator becoming head coach, I think defense will be a strong suit for them once again. They look to have a great season, but they're going to get tested right away in week 1. Moving on to Wanakee, a lot to say about them. They went 12-1. Their only loss last year was in the semifinals, as we talked about before. They're in the Badger Large Conference. They won that conference, went 7-0. So they are primed to have a really good season this year too, with 6 offensive starters returning, 6 defensive starters to return. So you have a lot going for them as far as building on what they came up just short on with people that have been there. They know what to do. So, I think it goes without saying that these teams are poised to be serious contenders. Wanakee brings back its first team all-conference offensive lineman tight end, Mac Johnson. Eli, I don't want to slaughter his name, Drangsviet, 853 yards on the ground last year, 10 total touchdowns, had a great season. The biggest question for them is replacing their quarterback and their leading rusher. So while they bring a lot of talent back in underclassmen from last year to this year, there's some key positions that are going to have to be filled when it comes to quarterback and running back. Speaking of, all the similarities between how these teams ended their season last year and, what they do similarly and what their lineage is, Wanakee also runs a wing T offense. Theirs is a little bit more of a modern version, a little bit less reliant on the run game. So you'll see a little bit more passing from them. But, I think that's one of the benefits that these teams each have. They practice against wing T offenses in practice all the time. I think the key to the game is whoever can handle the opposing team's wing T offense the best will probably grab this one. But I think you're up for a great matchup. If you're looking for something to do on Friday night, I think it's a great game. Can't wait to send out highlights to that.